After the last video, I'm on a bit of a retro emulation kick. A retro emulation kick! And I came across this Zotac mini PC on eBay for $40. I like to cover these mini PCs for emulation because a lot of people who build their own emulation systems prefer these smaller, more compact models. They aren't concerned about the absolute best, more pricey specs, but rather just something small and out of the way they can drop by their TV and just fire up some retro games from time to time. I haven't tested this yet, but judging by the specs, my hopes are relatively high. Relatively meaning once we factor in price and size. Obviously, it's not going to blow me away or anything, but for the $40 price tag, I think just generally it's going to be a really good deal. So, what are the specs? Well, to answer this question, we must first ask another question. Are you down with the chair desk? If you're down with the chair desk, then let's break down this device. Alright, the computer itself looks okay, but it does feel kind of cheap, to be honest. Which isn't a huge deal at all, but it is just kind of like basic light plastic. A couple of bolts on the back, and it just kind of slides open. On the inside, we have DDR3 1600 MHz RAM. This only came with a single 4GB stick, but I'm going to replace this with two 4GB sticks to up the total to 8GB and run dual channel, which the board is capable of. After that, I'm going to quickly drop in an SSD that I have Botacera loaded on for our emulation testing, which is simple enough. There's a little caddy here that you drop the drive into and then just kind of slide it back into place. As far as the CPU, this came with the AMD FX-7600P. That's a quad-core CPU, base clock rate of 2.7 GHz, 3.6 GHz boost clock rate, which, as far as retro emulation is concerned, probably not too shabby. So, thus far, I really don't think we'd be justified in getting angry and throwing it at the wall or anything like that. Where's that $20 crap top? Unlike this trash. It's also worth noting that this device does have active cooling with this CPU fan, which most of the mini PCs like this do, but not all of them. So like I said, worth noting. That's why I noted it! That's why I noted it! One disappointment was that there was no slot for an M2 SSD, which devices from around this era are pretty hit or miss on that. This one probably came in right before that started being common, and it would have been nice, but it's not a huge deal considering the price point. And it has this little light on top when you power it on, which is, I guess it looks kind of nice. The light is certainly a light. One final note about the hardware as we're powering it on is that I was able to use one of these just generic sort of power adapters. This was about $15 at Walmart. It's just like a power brick, but it comes with all these different adapters, so you can use it hypothetically on a bunch of different devices, which now that I've tested, I know this definitely works, which is nice because you don't have to order like a custom power adapter or something like that. Probably worth mentioning a few things about the exterior as well. First of all, we have the little sneaky McSneak USB 3.0 port. Just a single little hidden lonely USB 3.0 on the side for inexplicable reasons. Aside from that, about what you'd expect. Headphone jack, microphone jack, a SD card reader, which is cool because, again, from this era, a lot of devices don't have that. We have two Ethernet ports, which could be cool if you wanted to, say, turn this into a little mini server or like a router or something like that. Could make for a fun project. Two more USB 3.0, and then for reasons I cannot possibly fathom, 4 DisplayPort connectors. And this is a troublesome puzzles. just came to yell at me because I'm making too much noise. Again, with the DisplayPorts, maybe there's just something obvious I'm missing. Maybe people in the comments will be like, oh, duh, it's for like this whatever. But for a computer this size that's this limited in power, I don't know what you would be doing with 4 DisplayPort connectors. Up to some shenanigans, no doubt. Alright, emulation testing. Well, I'm actually kind of surprised at how poorly it's performing. It's not terrible, it's going to be a useful emulator, but given the specs it has and other devices I've used with similar specs, I did expect better performance than this. So I'm able to run PSP. Native resolution isn't an issue whatsoever. Even 2 times upscaling is actually perfectly fine. So PSP, even with upscaling and some of the older systems, are going to be completely fine, but it doesn't seem like this system is going to be able to emulate PlayStation 2, which, given these old cheap devices, that's usually the benchmark that I like to hit. I usually consider it a pretty solid deal if it's an older cheap computer, but it's capable of running PlayStation 2 without issue. But as you can see here, we're just trying some Kingdom Hearts, and the frame rate is continually dropping. It's hanging closer to 30 than 50, which is usually what it runs at when it's fully functional. And there's a lot of slowdowns in the game where it's trying to compensate for how poorly it's running. So there's a positive in that it can run PSP and most of the older systems, but it didn't quite reach PlayStation 2, which is where I would have liked to have seen it go. And I'm adding this in here to mention, as I'm testing it further, I'm finding that GameCube actually does seem to be playable, which is odd, because normally GameCube is right on par with PlayStation 2. Yeah, strangely enough, it seems like at least some GameCube is playable. For $40, it's not bad, though it is a little disappointing. A good deal, not a great deal. When it comes to emulation, I don't think this is the way to go. I'd like to be able to say which model of Zotac mini PCs this is, but there's like no indicators anywhere on the device, and I had a really difficult time finding information on it. But you can probably recognize it based on specs if you see similar listings in the wild. I really don't think this is the way to go if you're looking for a mini emulation device. Again, it's not terrible if you find an especially good deal, but I've seen a lot of similar devices for around the same price point that just do way better, which is something to keep in mind. Anyways, that is all. Thank you for watching, and I will see you later.